All right. Come on now. Come on now. Come on now. We gotta get started. I got a lot going on today. I can't just stand around all day. There's just so much happening. I have to say right now, starting the show, welcome. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide, Hour 2. Philip Ittner will be joining us. I'm very excited about that because there's a lot been going on. Not the least of which was a fifth grader dunked on Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin's big PR gaggle win hangout. Where, by the way, for the record, um, China agreed to give nothing, and Russia agreed to give China anything it wants. And essentially, all that, we'll boil that down later in my own theory about that. But I think it has a lot to do with them basically paying China not to stop them doing what they're doing. That's current. Like, we'll give you all like cheap gas and all this other stuff and foodstuffs because we know you guys need food desperately. We'll give you that stuff if you just don't stop us from our attack on Ukraine. On Ukraine, you don't have to help Ukraine. You don't have to help us in any material way, but just don't wipe us out, right? So don't pull the rug. You're our one big buddy. Yeah. So, anyways, hi, welcome, chat room, everybody who's here. Let me say hellos to you. Hold on, I gotta shrink down the chat thing. Sounds okay and everything. I remembered to turn the microphone on today. It's a red letter day. And I have to say, hi, everybody. There they are. Hi, you lovely folks. Just golly. Oh, yeah, I can't put the regular chat box in. I was like, I should put the regular chat box in there. And then I realized it would only show the Twitch people, which we love. Twitch.tv/AlSparks. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't in a while and you forgot and you're a lapsed subscriber on there. Give it a shot. If you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime for one subscription a month. If I could be that one subscription every so often, that'd be fantastic. And hi, yeah, everybody. Yes, coffee is good. How are you? 30-mile-per-hour winds. We've been having them this morning. Like, I got up this morning and I went down to, make my girl coffee, as I do in the mornings, because I'm that kind of guy. And as I was basically like putting the coffee and setting it, that kind of stuff, and then I go over and I notice the bushes outside are doing this business. And I was like, something tells me we're going to have a lot of window rattle later. Yeah. Yeah, I got Legolas hair today. It's fine. Chinese do not like wheat. Does Russia have rice? No, but because rice, interestingly enough, while its caloric value is much ballyhooed, much touted in the world, is effectively useless as a foodstuff. It is it's one of the greatest things. The purpose rice serves in the Asian diet is very much the same as what noodles serve in the Italian or I guess southeastern European diet, or potatoes or bread serve anywhere else in the world, or tortillas, whatever. It's to make the food. It is to thicken the experience of eating food to reach satiation earlier so that you can feel full and you can stretch a little bit of valuable food a little longer. And rice in particular is that's its primary usage, right? And it, interestingly enough, it's a very expensive crop. As crops go, it requires more phosphate and fertilizer. Oddly enough, you would think, because we kind of have this picture of rice being, for lack of a better phrase, a poverty food or a third world food or a base staple that even the poor can afford. Much like potatoes were until the Irish were like, we're out of potatoes, that kind of stuff. It's a very weak grain and it's filler. But it's very difficult to make. It's very strange that that's what you would use as your filler carbohydrate in that situation. And that said, Russia does not make it. The United States makes a decent amount of it, obviously China, that's their primary crop. All throughout Asia, there's, different kinds. The Indians' basmati rice is probably the least impactful in the world. It's got a yellowish hue. It maintains itself a little better. But I would like to say, for the record, for those of you that enjoy rice and are under the illusion somehow that brown rice is somehow superior to white rice, because of some, I don't know, misplaced idea about processing, or that nothing in nature is white naturally or something. I don't know. I would like to remind you that there are no societies that are thousands of years old, rich or poor, that eat the husks of rice, that eat it without processing it. You understand? Like, you would think that if it was about the the nutritional value, or the overall food, just value as a plain food stuff, if you could eat it with unprocessed, without the with the husk basically taken off, then obviously poor people would just eat it that way because it's nutritionally more dense, it's better for you, and you don't have to put any extra work in. Happy birthday, early birthday, EO. Yeah, rice is fine, but what I'm telling you is all societies eventually realized that you gotta process the rice if you're gonna eat it. Brown rice has more fiber, but barely. It's not about the fiber amount. It's about the sharpness of the husk itself and its lack of digestibility. It scars up your intestines. It's not good. If it was good and it benefited people, why would centuries of poor people bother to do? You don't think one, you think so little of poor people that you don't think one of them would have a moment of wisdom where they'd go, it's perfectly fine if we don't knock the husk off it and just eat it the way it is without processing it fully. Why don't we just do that? Save ourselves about 6 hours out of our fucking day per meal. And then if the rich people like it when it's fluffy and white and plain like that, and they want to do that, then that's fine. That's how you usually have the bifurcation of processing of food throughout societies, is that the poor people eat the raw version because it's extra effort, and the rich people hire someone to do the effort for them, or enslave someone to do the effort for them, and they enjoy it in its easiest form. Think peeled grapes, for example, right? The old idea of that people peeling grapes for the king or the emperor, right? But the rest of us just eat the fucking grape, right, with the skin on it. Okay. Um, there are a lot of those foodstuffs in the world, right? There are a lot of foodstuffs where there is a, there's a balance in labor, and therefore the consumption of it, even to the point where it's, there's some irony in it, in that sometimes in the fattier meats of animals, for example, while they're perfectly fine nutritionally, the organ meats are actually higher in nutritional value in some cases. So the poor people would be left with the organ meats, and the rich people would just be eating the fatty, sweet cuts of the meat that are actually easy to cook and tasty and all that kind of stuff. And while they would get benefits, the poor people are actually getting more benefits from the food because they didn't recognize the value of the cast off, right? So in the case of rice, though, that has never been the case. That has never been the reality with rice. Poor or rich, any country that eats rice on the regular and has for millennia always takes the husk off. It is a brand new, modern, less than, I would say, 40-year-old idea that brown rice is, and by the way, brown rice not being the color of it, but rice with the husk still on it, is a good thing to do. If you'll notice, there's been a lot more gastrointestinal problems there, at least. And again, you always have to weigh this against awareness versus reality, because they might not have on this. Yeah, it's a rice rant. I just think it's important. Um, Unhusked rice is brown rice, hence harder to digest. What I'm saying. Yes, that's exactly right. There's why would poor people bother to unhusk the rice if they could just eat it and it was better? How have you heard of high meat? Yes, I have. I'm not going there. But what oil is popular in China? Oh, you mean cooking oil? They have no idea. Unfortunately, the the there is no way to know in China if any of the food you have is what is on the package. It's insane. So, yeah. Peanut oil, right. Yeah. Or, fake olive oil. Um, yeah. By the way, vegetable oils in general, seed oils, not good. Not good for you. Not at all. It's way too many steps between, like, olive oil is like wine grapes. You can stomp on it and it will this you filter the little bits of olive out of it and it's oil. It's right there. You can cook with it, right? To some degree, avocado oil is the same way, right? Because it's a moist fruit and therefore you can get the oil out of it fairly easy. If it takes 5 steps to get oil from something, I don't eat it. It's not a good idea. Also, toenails. Yes, you got to get the toenails out, Doc Spano. I'm not here to yuck your yum, but since we're on the food of it, hemp oil also too many processing steps. Homony's a good time. Avocado is terrific. Agreed. Sesame oil in much Asian foods. Yes, agreed. And it's not per se a good thing either. But it's easy to make a lot of it. And then what they do is in the process, a lot of times they'll dry the sesame seeds and they end up in other stuff. So you basically suck the oil out of it, use the oil for cooking, and use the husky remnant of the sesame seed to garnish things or add to food, whatever. Virgin coconut oil, coconut oil is pretty good. It's again basically one step. What about grits? How many grits? I mean, come on now. Arguably, Johnny, you would be right in that grits are redneck rice. They have been for a long time. It's how many? It's corn. It's puffed corn, and it's basically pulverized. Minced into tiny bits. While it's still hard and yes, hominy is boiled in lye. Yeah, it's not a good. That's not a good part of it. Agreed. But the old kind. Yes, canola oil is terrible. I will not kiss your grits, Easy E Network. I'm sorry. How are we doing? We're doing all right. I'm just letting everybody gather in here. We just decided to have a food thing. Crisco is hydrogenated. Crisco is horrifying. Honestly, cook in butter for fuck's sake. Or tallow, I suppose. My grandmother used to collect the fat when she would cook like bacon or meats of any sort. She would collect the fat afterwards. She had a jar on the counter of this, like, pretty, actually, I have to say, considering the idea that it came out of an iron skillet, it was pretty white looking. It was pretty pure looking in that regard, and it had little flecks in it occasionally, but no big deal. And she would just scoop some of that out and cook with that. Yeah. You like canola oil? It does not like you. I promise. Coffee whitener? Yike. This is called a food fight. Yes, it is. Eat what you want, be happy. I agree. But eat what you want with your eyes open. Otherwise, that statement is the same as like smoke them if you got them. You got to die of something, right? Couscous. Mind yourself. So, anyways, I have a lot of stuff to cover in the news. We just have to ease into it this morning because holy shit, what's been going on with the yeah. My Danish grandfather used to save bacon grease and spread it on a hefty piece of bread every morning. Mary, Philip Ittner is going to be joining us in the second hour, and he introduced me to the Ukrainian pork fat like spread. They have this like thinly sliced pork fat that they just put on bread as a thing. And it was delicious. It was brutally delicious. MCT oil, yeah, that's coconut oil. I would, I wouldn't go more than like a tablespoon of it a day. I put it or a tablespoon and a half. I when I make bulletproof coffee occasionally, I'll use either ghee or unsalted Irish butter and a tablespoon and a half of MCT oil in coffee, and that works out great. So yeah, anybody who doesn't know how to make that, you just basically make yourself a big cup of coffee, whatever your size choice is, 8, 10, 12 ounces, whatever. Put it in your blender. Put in like 2 tablespoons of butter and a tablespoon and a half of, and that's the big spoon for the who's at home, of MCT oil in your blender, and blend it till it's just all a yellow, frothy wonderfulness, and then pour it back into the cup, and then drink it. It's a good time. Walnut oil? No. No. Ghee is very good. Yeah. I mean, for all the talk about like this is what we're going to talk about this morning, nothing lights up. Yeah, Kerrygold, absolutely. Look at it. Um, it's delightful. Stop it. I will pull this show over. Um, so many steps. It's the Kale Link. It's super easy. It's super easy. Make a cup of coffee, pour it in the blender. 2 scoops of butter with a tablespoon, heaping ones. Just get the butter in there, and then pour like a whoop whoop zip. That's it, and then blend it. You're done. It's not complicated. I don't do it all the time, but when I do, it's super. Uh, MTG oil, that's different. We're talking MCT oil. MTG oil is the residue left on her by an RSBN host. I just made myself throw up in my own mouth a little. That's not good. We're having a lovely conversation. MTG oil. Blarf, blarf. Yeah. Yeah, that's bulletproof coffee. MTG oil would be nasty. Yeah. It's MCT. No, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Nice Guy. I try. MTG oil is a carcinogen, no doubt. Well, I wouldn't give her that much power, honestly. MTG sex grease. Really? You had to type that, Garrick, did you? Did you? You've been doing a little boozing, have you? Hand me that bottle if you knew it was good for you, you pumpkin pie haircutted freak. I don't know why I went to Bob Marley's bit and Dumb and Dumber, but so we have MTG oil. Nasty. Quit it. That's going to be stuck with us all day. MTG oil. You should have a nutritionist on one of these days. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll bring somebody on and kind of explain the whole like why I'm currently carnivore for the time being, and I will slowly add things back in. The primary one is that I've always had skin issues, and my dad has kidney issues, and I share a lot of his physical features. If he's had a malady, I'll have it as well. So I'm trying to head off some of those things early. And I think I told you guys, but during the filming of Queer as Folk and a couple of times along the line, I've had like reactions to detergents and the like. Very sensitive to that stuff. And the comedian, not the reggae person. And so I would get these like rashes on the insides of my elbows where the clothes would scrunch and touch where the skin would rub against any place where like for whatever reason it was just bad. It was just like, and considering back then I had to be naked a bunch. It was a constant running thing, so I was always trying to chase down what caused it and the like. And so I have been sort of returning it. Yeah, it wasn't eczema though. It would be contact dermatitis caused by it. Thanks. Oh, I appreciate you like my hair today. Yeah, I'm doing the Legolas William Wallace do today. Yeah, it's this would be business in the front, freedom in the back. That's how I'm gonna call it. So, anyways, yeah, it's terrible. And yeah, it in this particular case, we were in Canada, so they were swapping shit out all the time, and it's a different. There are different standards in the states versus Canada, so whatever. Anyways, like to avoid those things. Never skip Legolas Day. That's great. Yes. Um. So yeah, it was really awful. So I decided, I my personal belief is most allergy professionals, like doctors will tell you this. I've met with enough of them over the years trying to figure out what the fuck it was. Most of them will tell you that a lot of your allergy symptoms are about base toxicity overflowing. So you've got a cup, it's completely full, and then the next toxin that enters makes it overflow. So if you get sinuses, your sinuses flare up around, because of pollen, um, it might be because you are, genetically predisposed and to hate this particular pollen and it fucks with you. Like it was very telling that as a kid, the only plant I'm allergic to apparently is goldenrod, which is the Kentucky state flower, which is the state I lived in as a child. So Hal gets ashy. No, not too bad. I'm okay. I've got fairly, like my skin along, like I'll get here and the top of my arms a little bit if I, but rarely. I need to moisturize, as it were. But anyways, I was allergic to the Kentucky state flower while, living there a bunch. But part of it also might have been because this was the 70s, early 80s, that I was actually eating garbage and living an impoverished life. So my system was fending off shit all the time. And then when the goldenrod, bloomed, it was too much. And then I would get symptoms because the symptoms were the overflowing of that, right? So um, I kind of learned that early that if I, eat healthy and take care of myself and exercise and that kind of stuff, I never had sort of sinus issues um ever again after I realized, oh, it might be that I'm allergic to goldenrod, or it might be that my diet is like 50% Dr. Pepper, like when you're a kid. Um, so by lowering the amount of toxicity in my body, my body might be reacting to goldenrod, but not enough to create symptoms because it's stacked. My body can fend it off. It's not overwhelmed. It's not like, oh, okay, we have to shove this shit out his nose. And so with the skin stuff, I was like, I'm done. There's something that sets this off, and I'm not going there again. And so an elimination diet is one of the best ways to do it because you're going back to zero and you're kind of going, all right, I'll add little things. It's a histamine. Uh, yes, histamine is a bucket. Builds and fills the bucket. Check out histamine intolerance. Right. That's so. Sometimes, um, notice, for example, some people will sneeze shortly after they've had eggs, or shortly after they've had oatmeal, or but it's a little time later, so you don't associate it with it. It's not you don't have a direct like pepper response, right? So you will, it will be caused by a histamine reaction, but it's about how long it takes for your body to fend it off, or before it overwhelms the system and you have to sneeze, right? Slim Jims and dill pickles. That's not far. Robert, I one of the things that probably was like, I mean, the healthiest thing I ate as a child was definitely venison. Like we were lucky. It's I was underweight, and I'm shorter than I should be because of malnutrition when I was a kid. However, I did get plenty of fat and protein in one form, which was we always had deer meat, and so I grew up on it largely, which was lucky when I was a kid. But anyways, it's the AIP diet you want to do to find it. I see. Oh, like for allergy elimination concept or whatever. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Lauren Ipsum. I appreciate it. And by the way, I appreciate Lauren Ipsum showing up in every new document. Um, congratulations, you're very popular. Oh, thank you, Shiba Dog, from Loretta Smith, the sticker. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I haven't. I'm sorry, I forgot to remind everybody. Super chats, support the show. Patreon.com. Um, we'll get to the real stories in a second. This is just a good conversation. Mr. Pip. You mean Mr. Pibb? I don't know. I'm not familiar. Is Mr. Pip a knockoff of Mr. Pibb, which is a knockoff of Dr. Pepper? Right. Hal can't take his own venison. No, but I like that. Like having eaten that much venison as a kid, it is um like some people have issues digesting oily fish or blah blah blah. Like whoever people have differences about it, but I've never had a problem with venison. It's probably because I grew up on it. But anyways, point being is that that's why I'm doing it, and I think it's a good idea that we have on a nutritionist at some point to talk about the value of this at one point. But for the record, if you read books like Guns, Germs, and Steel, and books about sort of historical resource wars, interestingly enough, many wars have been fought over fields used to grow wheat and corn and barley, quite frankly, early on. But none over rice paddies, none over the areas where rice is grown. Like nobody is like, we have to take that because we need to grow some rice. Like everybody was like, I'm not dying over rice. Once you move in and your society, you're fighting wars to keep your society functioning and keep people from invading from the outside, but not because they're like, ooh, sweet rice land you've got there. It's very curious. Have you tried chicory coffee? I don't think so. Venison is a very lean meat, so I assume it will digest better than red meat. Red meat digests just fine. It's usually what people eat with it that clogs things up. And again, that goes to the rice husk idea that you have a lining on your intestine that is one cell thick, and a lot of insoluble fiber, the rough kind of stuff, not like chia seeds or shit like that, but like husks like that make it through your stomach and come out almost completely intact, can scrape the shit out of your intestinal wall and cut through that one cell thick lining, and your body reacts. It's when you'll see people that eat, and move and they're active and that stuff, and they have a gut, but they don't have fat elsewhere. That's yeah, leaky gut damage. It's very telling in the South. You got very active people with these giant beer bellies, effectively, and that's part of it because they'll blame it on beer, which is the puffing fat around it, but it's really all the other shit that goes with it. Red meat is really resource intensive. That's a myth, Don. The the amount of nutritional density in a steak, for example, that a human being can consume, when the cow is doing the work for you, it's taking the grain and the grass that it's eating and converting it to protein and fat and the vitamins and whatnot that are in it. When you eat that, has fewer steps and is actually less resource intensive than the processing of grains into other foodstuffs. A Snickers bar is more carbon intensive and resource intensive than a pound of ground beef. And in terms of their nutritional value, obviously the pound of ground beef wins. So yeah, we think in terms of direct 1-to-1, the methane from the cows, the grazing land necessary for them, and the like. But when you replace them with factories that process grains and oats and almonds and the like the amount of water needed for almonds is absurd. And then the processing of almonds into other stuff is incredibly carbon intensive. Yeah, 7 stomachs plus milk. Right. It's a machine. A cow is a factory for citation. Sure. As a matter of fact, we'll bring up hold on. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I still have the article. I'll start a Notion thing for all the articles about nutrition stuff on that. Carbon impact of Snickers bar. I think it was like one of the examples. Okay, 30 billion manufacturing raising from Snickers and M&M's has emerged as a global leader in environmental stewardship. Okay, so this is the Internet Climate Change on Supply Chain. Yeah, okay, so M&M Mars buys 10% of all cacao that's grown. There's let's see, 5 million. Okay. According to research climate models, okay, they wanted the natural conversion of forested agricultural violations into savanna, delving deeper. Mars sources most heavily from a region in Cote d'Ivoire, where scientists project to see an 800% increase in land classified as very low climate suitability for cacao. The problem is getting the knowledge out. Okay, cacao farmers. Palm oil is another raw material that they do. That palm oil is incredibly intensive. Research shown that 1 kilogram of palm oil corresponds with carbon emission of about 2.8 to 19.7 kilograms of CO2. The volume equivalent to 300 to 2,000 balloons full of CO2. This is because the production of palm oil has been facilitated by deforestation of tropical forests that hold large stores of carbon. They deforest more areas for growing these things because cows can't graze on a hillside that's steeper than a certain grade, but you can continue to grow palm oil, for example, and get palm oil. Does that make sense? Psyllium husk, I like only if prescribed by a doctor, but if you're having to scrape stuff out of your intestines all the time, there's something wrong with what you're putting in. I'm just saying. Beyond raw materials, let's see. Yeah, so this is a greenwashing article. It's basically the same thing, but they're trying to like, don't worry, Snickers aren't too bad. See this says going green, eat a Snickers. Yeah, this is those studies and those like reports that are funded by the industry that you hear about all the time. Okay, yeah, this is one of those. And even then, Mars currently sources mass balance of palm oil, where sustainable, certified, and non-certifiable palm oil are mixed together to reduce costs. However, so there's like 10% sustainable, 90% unsustainable, but hey, it's in there. And who couldn't trust a candy company to ask for the highest standards in terms of being honest or adapting the product? Other competitors have developed heat-resistant chocolate, which reduces the risk that a chocolate-based product will melt in transit. Mars may want to consider similar adaptations in its chocolate products. What a horrifying notion. Increased focus on water reduction and packaging. Mars missed its target for water reduction and sustainable packaging improvements in 2015, highlighting a key area for the company to improve on. So West Africa patterns, opportunities, limits of adaptation on climate change and cocoa in West Africa. Palm oil and emission of carbon-based greenhouse gases. The palm oil and emission, this is just the production of palm oil is fucking horrifying. And it's the emulsifier of choice. Yeah, I'm not even talking about the packaging. Right? I will never advocate for working while sick, especially contagious. You're a very wise person, Forrest. The green M&M is hot. Heat-resistant chocolate, so there goes the thermic effect for food, right? The Mars family are eccentrics. Yeah, but that won't factor into whether or not who decides what the candies are that make it from M&M Mars? The people that eat them. What people will put up with, what they will enjoy, what they insist upon, blah 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 blah. I'm about to depress Paul. This is and believe me, as a fan of dark chocolate, one of my favorite the only thing I would constitute that's anywhere close to a drug that I consume in terms of its impact would be oolong tea and a piece of dark chocolate because for whatever reason, it's creativity wise, it helps my brain. Like I don't know if it's just the oil in it and the fuel of it and the sugar and that mixed together or the tea calming effect that mix. I don't know what it is, but that's always been a thing. Okay, hold on one second. Uh, I'm about to depress the shit out of people who like dark chocolate, because this was bad. Hmm. Yeah, here's this is um this has been a rising concern over the last few months. Consumer Reports found dangerous heavy metals in chocolate from Hershey's, Theo, Trader Joe's, and other popular brands. Here are the ones that had the most, and some that are safer. And by the way, the dark chocolate, they tested milk chocolate as well, and obviously the dark chocolate because it had more of the essential ingredients instead of just sugar and palm oil pretending to be milk, which is another thing. Like at some point, they're going to have to call it like they're going to have to stop calling it milk chocolate at a certain point. Researchers found that some dark chocolate bars contain cadmium and lead, two heavy metals linked to a host of health problems in children and adults. Um, yeah. CR Test is Consumer Reports tested a mix of brands, including smaller ones such as Alter, Echo, and Mast, and familiar ones like Dove and Ghirardelli. For 23 of the bars, eating just 1 ounce a day would put an adult over the level that public health authorities and CR experts would say may be harmful for at least one of those heavy metals. 5 of the bars were above those levels for cadmium and lead. That's risky stuff. Consistent long-term exposure to even small amounts of heavy metals can lead to a variety of health problems, including, what do you know, lunacy. Yeah. Do you think there might be a reason why people are getting crazier and more anxious? Hal ruins everything. I do not. Yeah, dementia. Hmm. You know your body has metals too. Yes, I do know that, but you don't want to add to the burden of consumed heavy metals. 5 cadmium eggs. I love me some cadmium cream eggs. They're great. No Metallica in your dark chocolate? I don't know. I think I would rather have that. It does explain a lot. Here's one even better: that people that don't consume enough pure fats are more anxious than people who do. Yeah. If you're anxious, you may not have enough fat in your diet because your body responds to it. You know how, like, I told you guys my theory years ago that I've stuck to it because I think it works. This is not a medically derived theory, but I stand by it from my own experience in life, which is that depression is thirst and anger is hunger. You can, if you are, nutrient deficient, you'll get hangry because you need to eat more because you do not have enough food stores. So nature will say, look, we've got to eat something, and it might entail knocking that person over the head or killing that animal or climbing that tree. So it's going to require some effort. So getting angry and agitated about it might help. So it's a naturally occurring emotion when you need to eat, it's closer to it. Now, it's no excuse for a civilized adult. I don't give a shit if you're grumpy because you haven't eaten. You're not a toddler. Go feed yourself. It's nobody's problem but yours. But that's where the feeling comes from. Depression, on the other hand, is usually more leans in the dehydration camp. If you don't have enough water, enough fluid in your body, or the idea that you can't make it rain by being angry, so it's closer to a form of like um uh, like when a bear shuts down for the winter, you know what I mean? Or like birds or whatever will settle and just sit, or animals will just kind of like lay around in the savannah until there's some movement. Um, so either it rains or there's an animal nearby that they can eat to consume the fluid in that animal's body through a myriad of ways. Um, Hold on, I was reading and talking at the same time. Yeah, so you can be fat and dehydrated. This is true, absolutely. But the point is, emotionally, sugar is worse than fat. It absolutely is. Um, yeah, hibernation. Yes, it's not quite a hibernation reflex. It's the early part of it where they start just getting laggy before their hibernation reflex kicks in. But yes, Betty White is a national treasure. I agree. That's right. Drink plenty of water every day. That's true. But also, I would argue, and I'm curious your feelings about this, that mineral water, and or tea or coffee are closer to the water quality that a human a long time ago would have encountered most of the time. The idea that purified H2O with nothing else in it was even available as a thought, and even in terms of collected rain, is a bit silly. So we had a tendency to drink effectively ditch water a lot of times, which is what tea is if you think about it. It's just refined ditch water. Anybody who's ever seen the color of a stream in the fall when the leaves have fallen on it and the water gets kind of a golden, almost tea-ish color, right? That there was a tendency that, to drink water that had been filtered through other stuff, had silt going through it. There was all kinds of stuff in the water on top of the water, and that became natural. And whereas water as we drink it is super purified beyond, with nothing else in it. Yeah, spring water, arguably. It's a lovely way of saying ditch water. How's brown bag series? Yes, tannins, all the stuff that's in there. Absolutely right. So that was closer to what we consumed. So our body's like adapted to be able to deal with that and expects a certain level of it. So our microbiome, our gut bacteria, one of the reasons why the British drink tea with every fucking meal, besides the fact that I guess their food is intolerable without it, is that it's so shitty in terms of like boiled meats and all this stuff. They've sucked all the nutritional value out of so many of their foodstuffs that their flora would die if they weren't guzzling ditch water at just above room temperature all the time. From the tannins in the caves. Hudson River water. Yes, chewy water. It's water you can eat with a fork. Filtered through socks, exactly. I like heavy cream in my coffee. I'm not here to yuck your yum, cat cookie. That's your business. All right, we got to get to this. I'm almost, Jesus Christ. It's almost, hold on. Phil's going to be here any minute, and I haven't even looked at the Trump thing. We ended up talking about this the whole time. Shit, I got to put my headphones in. Turn my headphones up. See how this happens? We see what happens with you guys when we get on a fun conversation? Kombucha is very similar. Kombucha is like man-made ditch water. You're drinking the urine of a mushroom, a giant living water mushroom. Doesn't sound particularly good, but it is. That's what it is. I knew because I've been a Californian for a good long while. I dated a girl in the late 90s who made her own kombucha. Yeah. Uh-huh. And she had this fucking thing under her bed, like in this giant pan covered in tinfoil, just kind of like, I can't even. Oh, it was worth it. That's all I'm saying. If you could still climb into that bed knowing what's hiding underneath it, it must have been miraculous. Yes, it was. Just saying. All right, so before Phil shows up, let's jump into what Trump is panicking about real quick, because this is the story. We'll give you the quick one, because Trump indictments is trending because of yesterday. There was let me shrink this down. There were obviously everybody's waiting for him to be forced to surrender. Word is apparently getting around, that. Okay, I have a theory. You guys definitely. I mean, if you're not here for the facts or the theories, I don't know. It must be my charming personality, but so I have a theory that. Remember how I was telling you guys that everybody's like, why won't they arrest him? God damn it. Why won't they just throw him in jail? He's such a criminal. Why won't they do it? And I'm like, because it's not about him. It's about his followers. You have to deflate the myth so is a large group of his followers, except for the last crazies, which will, by the way, scare off the second tier crazies. They'll be so nuts that people are like, nah, I can't hang. and they'll move. So psychologically, you kind of have to, you got to make those people head for the door first. And then you can go after him because they'll go, well, fuck that guy anyways. He's a rich asshole and he'd never got it. He was always lying to me and da-da-da. Yeah, they have to feel sort of betrayed by the myth before you can act on it. Or there'll be a Jan 6 like crowd. And that was the lesson learned from Jan 6, I think, by the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland and others, is that, all right, we're going to have to chip away at this dude's myth for a while. And then for the safety of our fellow Americans, then we can go after him, right? Thank you, Francie. I think the bringing up of Alvin Bragg bringing up this, the Stormy Daniels stuff again, is a way to tee up what's actually happening. The real story, that's the Corcoran story that came out this morning, which we'll see if we can do this, which is a big deal. This is happening right fucking now. So let's see, find the, I'll find the article it was in. So Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, worked with Alina Habba and Christina Bobb on the classified document stuff at Mar-a-Lago. And Alina Habba signed off on this document saying that, among other things, she, on May 5th, was at Bedminster, Trump Tower, and Mar-a-Lago and looked at every classified document, and there are no classified documents left at any of those places. And she's looked personally in drawers and desks. She did a personal search of the entire place, all in one day in 3 different states. Now, Bedminster, Mar-a-Lago, fairly close. Could you do that in the morning and come back later in the day? Very possibly. The idea, though, that she went to Mar-a-Lago and did the Mar-a-Lago the same day is absurd and stupid and ridiculous and fucked up. And obviously, she lied. Anybody just looking at that, her deposition, where she says she, on May 5th, she went to all 3 of those places and looked up made sure there were no documents, knows that that's nuts, and she's she either is lying on purpose because she has to and he made her, or she's just dumb, which is also possible because Trump tends to hire his male attorneys have to sound like a TV attorney or look like a TV attorney. And his female ones have to look like DA characters on Law and Order. Women that Dick Wolf would hire to be lawyers or prosecutors on Law and Order, just for their hotness. And it works out exactly as you might think it would. So, as ABC News has previously reported, investigators sought to compel the testimony of Corcoran and another Trump attorney, Jennifer Little, as part of their probe, citing the crime fraud exception, which allows for attorney-client privilege to be pierced in cases where it is suspected that legal services were rendered in the commission of a crime. Sources told ABC News that Howell ordered Little's testimony as well, with the exception of one of the topics for which she sought to assert attorney-client privilege. Both of them are fucked. And Corcoran apparently recorded his conversations with Donald Trump and has transcripts of the calls. And so he has till midnight tonight to turn over those transcripts or respond with a legal filing that the judge finds convincing that he doesn't have to. And the DOJ has till 6 a.m. tomorrow morning to respond to it. Because it seems they are not expecting that any legal play by Corcoran or Trump's other lawyers is going to be convincing. We're not going to arrest a president. No, he will surrender. He will not be arrested. He will be allowed to voluntarily surrender. Will he get booked? Yes. We can indict a president. Will they cuff him and all that kind of? No. it'll be I mean, they would stand off with this dumb motherfucker for months before they would charge in there and throw, and cuff him up. So, anyways, they pushed back against this and the Stormy Daniels thing at the same time. And so here's what I think. It's what I think. I think the idea was, if there is any coordination at all, and people think there isn't because Alvin Bragg went with this case, which is sort of the lower end of stuff and is a, quote, novel thing. And if they could even indict, it would be, difficult, if not impossible. I think there's an argument to be made here that embarrassing him might be a legal strategy for the safety of New Yorkers and other people before you bring the real legal hammer. And it is one of those cases that will tend to make his attorneys, and Mueller, she wrote's been killing it on this, by the way. This is the stuff about Howell. Howell found that prosecutors showed sufficient evidence. This is Judge Howell. Found that prosecutors showed sufficient evidence that Trump intentionally concealed the existence of additional classified documents from Corcoran, sources said, putting Corcoran in an unwitting position to deceive the government. Now, why is this particularly fascinating? I have a myriad of reasons why I think it is. Sources add that Howell also ordered Corcoran to hand over a number of records tied to what Howell described as Trump's illegal criminal scheme, echoing prosecutors whose records include handwritten notes, invoices, and transcriptions of personal audio recordings. So Trump's own attorney does not trust him. And then this is the appeals court thing that came up, where this, like, the minute the judge ordered that he has to turn over the transcripts, they asked for a stay immediately. It was granted by an appeals court. But the appeals court said, yeah, but you only get about 12 hours. Oh, here's Phil joining us. Hold on one second. I'm going to bring him in. I see him. We'll see if I can hear him in this business. 1 second. I'll put this up here. Hold on. Got to copy that. Get him in here. Make sure I can. Oh, I have to hear him in 1 second. And doing this. We're by the way, Phil coming in to join us is live in Kiev today. Yes, he's still in Kiev, and he's still drinking his cherry juice that will keep him healthy or what have you. There you go. Hold on 1 second. Pasting him in here, getting him in here, close that, and then hopefully it will populate almost instantly. And then I've got to change the audio thing so I can hear you through my headphones, which just should take a split second, because we've been talking just the last few minutes. We've been talking about health and nutrition this morning. Hello, Philip Ittner, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. How are you? And
good.
The importance of not eating brown rice. That was a conversation earlier, but yeah, because the husks are bad for you. Otherwise, poor people wouldn't remove them for centuries in every country on the planet.
Okay.
Why bother? All right. Anyways, we don't have to relitigate that conversation once again, but I stand by it. So welcome to the show. Hi, glad you're here with us, ladies and gentlemen. Philip Ittner, live in Kiev, at Philip Ittner. Follow him right now. Thumbs up, support the show, all that kind of stuff. And there's a ton of stuff going on. The first thing I want to get your reaction to, if I may, is, and I need to bring it up on screen before it happens, because
am I going to need my glasses?
No, because I think
too small.
You probably know this. You probably will know this when it happens. It'll come up in a minute. Give me a second. Let's see.
Is this Zaporizhia?
It's about the fifth grader. Do you know about the fifth grader? Did you see this one? Hold on 1 second.
The Ukrainian kid who was returned?
No, not at all. I got to switch your name on here. Sorry. Close this. I got to switch your name on this. So
if only it was Johnny Million.
I know. Yeah.
I can only dream.
I've got to take. Hold on. I'll fix the name.
Which one? What is this?
So that kid,
the kid who burnt who extinguished the whatever, the forever flame.
The forever flame. Yes.
Yeah.
So Yeah, here we
It
go.
wasn't the big one on Red Square. It was another one. It was a smaller town somewhere out east, if I remember correctly. But yeah, pretty ballsy thing to
Mojaisk.
do.
It's Mojaisk or something like that. Mos
Middle of
Eisley.
nowhere.
Yeah, but
Middle of nowhere.
kind of a
But
this. So yeah,
well, it can't actually. No, let me correct that. It can't be the middle of nowhere because they have a proper eternal flame, and you don't find
yes.
that in every single town and
This
province
is
in Russia.
Mojaisk, near Moscow.
Okay, it's Moscow Oblast. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That would have infrastructure like that. I thought it was for some reason I was in the impression it was somewhere out in Siberia, but no. If it was in the Oblast, then
yeah,
I'm not surprised that there was an eternal flame. Anyhow, getting lost in the weeds there. Um, more importantly, is the fact that this
yes,
kid had the guts to do this
yes. And by the
and
way,
thought he could get away with it.
well, and the smarts to do it, because people apparently, it's not uncommon for
Yes,
people to come up with a flame, no, with a fire extinguisher and try to put it out, and it won't work
but that
because
won't
it's
work. It won't
yeah.
work.
So
It's fed by a butane or a propane
gas
or
line, right?
some sort of accelerant, and it won't go out if you just squirt it with
Right.
and if I
Yeah,
so what you see in this video is he drops the thing in there,
and it
and it must be
explodes.
some sort of yeah. It knocks out. It must have expelled all the oxygen or something.
Yep, it's
Kid
like a
smart,
halon.
kid smart, clearly kid smart.
Yeah, and it fits perfectly. Talk about a design flaw.
Yeah, and
Uh,
he clearly thought this out. It wasn't
yep,
some sort of drunken because kids at
yeah.
that age can be drunken in
Well, it is
Russia.
Russia.
Um, it is Russia. You start drinking early.
Mhm.
Uh,
Nope.
so he wasn't some sort of like, I'm pissed off on this day, this afternoon. He gave some
No,
thought to
yeah,
this.
he
He
worked on
planned
this
this
for a
out.
while. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it
It's
does
kind
make you wonder. It makes you wonder how strong is the anti-war sentiment internally within Russia. And I would argue it's much larger than we know.
yes.
But sadly, Russia is also a country that has been brainwashed for 25 years.
Right.
So
Well, he's also apparently this kid that they identified this miscreant, as they called him, whatever the Russian word translation for miscreant is, and the word is he will be tried on terrorism charges.
he's a kid.
Right. Yeah. My exact thought. So, but more power to him. And holy shit, if they had any brains at all, they'd give him an honorary engineering degree. And we should be lucky that they haven't drafted him into the military, because the kid would be, invaluable in their war against to denazify the Ukrainian whatever diaspora. So. Anyways, I was like, good for him.
No, there are of course. I mean, Russia is a big country with 140 some odd million people in it. Of course, there are going to be people of all shades and colors, and
yes,
but I mean, from what I can tell, they're still very much subject to. Yeah, it's a huge, but they're still also subject to the brainwashing that's been going on for so long, and they're very good with it because they play into all the triggers that Russia respond to and Russians respond to. The whole Nazi thing, for example, is as much for internal consumption as it is for external consumption to justify their invasion.
Right.
The narrative being, we didn't finish killing all the Nazis in Ukraine at the end of the Second World War, so come and join the legacy of your grandfather and finish the most righteous fight that Russia has ever fought in, and help us finish off the Nazis. So I mean, and a lot of them buy into it. There's a lot of power in the Second World War in Russia.
Yeah.
Invoking the Second World War is, and I have made this analogy in the past, and I'll keep making it. The legacy of the Second World War in many ways transcends history and transcends culture and transcends everything and almost becomes a religion in
Right.
Russia. It is so intrinsic to their sense of self identity, who they are, um,
Well, it's why it's
what history is.
right. You can see
Yeah,
why there's a comradeship, for lack of a better word, between the Trump MAGA crowd and
yeah,
the Russian people to some degree, because there is this kind of dead ender, resentful hopelessness. You know what I mean? That they both
yeah,
share about their what they think should be their place in the world versus what it actually is.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
100%.
So that being said,
Exactly.
Trump, Putin is not smarter than a fifth grader apparently, which is not surprising. And then of course Xi Jinping, our worlds collided, my friend, in the last couple of
Hmm.
days when Xi
Yeah,
Jinping went to
yeah.
meet with
Big visit.
Russia, and
Yep.
Russia got fuck all out of that
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Effectively, and this is, from what I can see as far as what was promised and what's going to be delivered, Russia seems to be paying China in gas and grain not to stop them from attacking Ukraine, not to just stay on their team in a soft way. There's some
Hmm.
talk about them sending what are effectively AR-15s that the Russians can mod to full auto, that kind of, as hunting rifles, so they get around sanctions. And these are Chinese companies selling to a Wagner secondary that, when you look in the news, China sold weapons to Russia, but they're definitely threading a needle trying to make it as, so they can have a
Yeah.
plausible deniability at some point. But that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But insofar as support, it ain't coming. Like that,
Nope.
after all that, after the big show of, and arguably, I think after the Saudi Iran thing, that maybe Xi Jinping thought that he could, take credit for, a Russia Ukraine ceasefire by forcing it on the Russians, by demanding it from them essentially in private remarks or whatever, and that didn't happen. And the Saudi Iranian thing was a fart in a bag that lasted about 24 hours as well. They're now haggling over the fact that Iran is still supporting the Houthis in Yemen. And that was always the problem, which is why the Iraqis couldn't seal the deal when they set it forward. Like the Chinese just had a big glad handing thing. It's the same shit. It's the same, like it's all about face and performance
Well,
art.
and she's Chinese peace proposal is a lot of vagaries and a lot
Right.
of kind of loose, kind of like, well, let's territorial integrity should be respected. Yeah, but when you talk about territorial integrity, do you include the four oblasts that had
Right.
referendums held under a bayonet?
Right.
Is that the territory? Because the Russians are going to tell you that's their territory. The
Right.
Russians are going to see territorial integrity includes all the land that we just robbed and stole from Ukraine at the end of a barrel. And what I see more disturbing than the actual event of the summit or whatever it is, the meeting, was the reaction in the West by the same actors that we
Right.
always see. But there's, the U.S. isn't doing anything to support peace. As a matter of fact, the U.S. has stopped peace. They've
Right.
told
They're prolonging
Zelensky
this and killing more
they're
Ukrainians and
prolonging this,
the
and
inevitable.
they're against Ukraine talking peace. Well, no, I mean what what the
Mhm.
position of the West is to support Ukraine and Ukraine's intentions. Zelensky has a 10-point plan for
Right.
peace in Ukraine.
Hmm.
Why it is that people are more interested in Xi's proposal for peace than they are in Zelensky's proposal for peace gives me pause and makes me consider, makes me question people's
Right.
intention. What are they looking for? Because
Right.
Zelensky is very clear in his 10-point plan. He's like 91 borders. Give us all our children back. Give us all the people you've abducted. Pay reparations. And you'll never come back. State
Hmm.
that you will never, that you will not launch other offensive operations.
Right.
I mean, all these things, and first and foremost, Russia is never going to agree to 91 borders unless
Right.
unless they are
Forced to.
forcibly pushed out. They
Right.
will never ever they will never accept 91 borders.
Right. So both are a
That's what this whole
non-starter, by
thing's
the
been
way. As
about.
much I agree.
Yep.
Both of what you're talking about, either Zelensky's or Xi Jinping's, his 12-step program. Neither of those will be accepted by Russia in any form, no matter how much it looks like a giant, olive branch delivery. None of it, because it entails recognition of sovereignty, period. And that argument, once that happens and the Ukrainians are part of the conversation and negotiation, they mean our sovereignty, we had it, then you attacked. After, by the way, they signed the NATO-Russia founding agreement. Now, there are a couple of things. Also, in comparison, Kishida, the Japanese
Prime Minister. Yeah, he
yeah,
rocked up.
yeah, he just showed up in Ukraine.
Yep.
And that was a big deal. And the contrast on it, I think, I want to find Melissa Chan's tweet on it. It was interesting.
You mean the difference between how she was received in the Kremlin as opposed to the way Fushida, is it?
Yes, no,
Was
Kishida.
Kishida
Yeah,
was met by Zelensky. It's pretty noticeable, the difference.
yes, it is. In this particular case, this is her post about this, and it's pretty fascinating. She goes, "In my parents' generation, Japan was a destroyer, not a defender. Now Kishida is in Ukraine, a strong democratic voice. As an ethnic Chinese, I then see Xi with Putin the same week, and honestly, the contrast, it makes me sad." And she's not wrong.
No.
It's a terrible experience, for Chinese people in the diaspora to see that that's where their leadership, of their country did. It would be like for you and me if I have Irish and Scottish roots, or whoever, if the Scottish Prime Minister decided to meet with Osama bin Laden. And there were people around saying, well, the funding in Afghanistan and the back and forth and the U.S. and the CIA, about, they would do the same shitty argument. But the reality is that anybody who was from there would be going, this fucking sucks. That they're picking, to, at this point, side with the guy after he killed a bunch of people on purpose.
And all the imperial Russia trappings and the way that the pomp and circumstance of the Chinese-Russian meeting, as opposed to two human beings meeting in Kiev to discuss about defending, the rights of people in liberal democracies around the world. I mean, there it is, right there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
So
it's
the reaction to this whole thing, to the Xi meeting, I gotta say, it's another instance of people just massively having a lack of understanding of what's happening here. And this desire, look, we've talked about this, how the desire for war to end. Nobody, except for some severely unbalanced people, nobody likes war. Right. War is an awful, awful thing on so many different levels. Nobody wants war. I don't want war here, but I recognize that if this war is not ended properly, and by that I do mean 91 borders, because Crimea, we can maybe negotiate something, but even that, I think, is I am coming around to the idea that it has to be Crimea as well. But ultimately, the problem is for Ukraine, and this is something they don't, because everybody looks at it through an American prism, especially, well, there's some people that you and I are critical of online here, but I won't go into it. But they're so desirous of an end to war. And they also, by the way, are like, America's not doing a thing. That whole, seeing it through an American prism drives me to absolute distraction, because what they don't understand is that, knowing the Russians the way I do, and knowing the history of the conflict here, which goes back far beyond NATO, far beyond a post
Hmm.
World War II world, or a post Cold War world. If this is not concluded, I mean, like definitively concluded, it'll
Right.
happen again. It'll
Yes.
just keep happening. The First World War, the Second World War, and now this conflict all stem from the same question: who controls the territory from the Baltic to the Adriatic to the Black Sea? That triangle of European territory, which has passed hands
Hmm.
between so many different empires and which has so many different ethnic groups in it, and is so contentious and has been fought over for so long, it has been
Yes.
whittled away. First, it was the First World War and the death of empire, and then empire fragmented, and so then there was those tensions,
Right.
and those tensions then eventually led to the Second World War, where Germany was looking to expand into, basically Ukraine. Lebensraum was Ukraine. It was not Russia. It was Ukraine.
Hmm.
Hitler was looking for this place more than anything else. Um, so
Hmm.
those both first and second World War, you could argue, well, not you could argue, it's just a matter of historical fact, stemmed
Right.
from this place. Unless this gets resolved, there will be a third World War, a proper 100% conflict
Right.
between superpowers or
If
larger
Russia
powers.
still thinks it has a shot in this
Yep,
situation, it will continue to try to take
that's
that
right.
shot. By the way, it scrolled past it. One of our, because some of
But
the
it
people in
just
the
it
chat
just
are,
pisses me
yeah,
off.
totally.
Pisses me off
Are
because it's
talking
like,
about like
just
you can be
take
against
the
war.
yeah.
Yeah, Kath
Be
in
against
our
war,
chat says
absolutely. And
nobody should want innocents being raped, brutalized, and murdered. That's what we don't want. It's the idea of also as
of course not.
war as a catch-all word is fascinating to me because we in the U.S. think of ourselves, especially the anti-war movement in the United States, that the part of it that thinks of the U.S. as the prime mover in wars. There is a group of people who believes that Jews in America and worked with Jews in Europe to start World War I and World War II. That crowd. Okay, so they belong in the what they would say is the anti-war crowd. They would call themselves that if you asked them. But the reason they feel that is because they're talking about, even in this limited context, the idea that we shouldn't commit war on another country. We shouldn't act and create a war against someone. Genuinely, there's a big bunch of people in the anti-war movement that think of it as America always starts it. So when we say we're against war, what we mean is against the wars that we start, so we can march. And by the way, it's its own form of American exceptionalism. The idea that
Yes.
America, it's just another coat for that same bullshit idea. Right wingers think America is magically in charge of all the good in the world, and nobody else has any say in anything, and nobody ever invented or created anything but from here. There's a flip side that's the exact same argument, which is the cause of all the wrong in the world, and that other people are basically just animals, that the Russians themselves are reacting like a bit dog, or a kicked dog rather, either way, and America started it. It's the same bullshit. It's the same ego and everything. But the idea is that they're not really against war in the abstract. As a matter of fact, in this particular case, they're rooting for Russia over Ukraine. They are actively
Yes.
celebrating when Russia is going to take Bakhmut or something like that. You can see it in them whether it's Jackson Hinkle or it's Jimmy Dore or it's fucking Scott Ritter, or any of the people, fucking Ron Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, anybody who spoke at that fucking rally was
Well,
not anti-war.
yeah, but even like Chink and
Yeah,
Anna have come out. Their reaction to it, when I saw their reaction to the Chinese Russian summit, I was like,
right.
"You got it wrong. You got it wrong again because you're
Yes,
looking at it through an American prism."
right. And again, I fall very soundly into the good luck in your senior year category, knowing what I know about. Speaking of what you know about Russia through you, someone I trust as a source because I know you personally, but also my own personal experience in China on the ground, in places where
Yeah.
the government wanted me to be and places where the government absolutely did not want me to be. I was in both places, and I am here to tell you that it is the town at the end of Blazing Saddles. China currently is a fucking facade. The whole
Mhm.
country. The you know, the ghost cities alone should make you question every aspect of any numbers, any growth or loss, anything coming out of China, period. It's an absurdity. And the idea that that's who's going to come to the rescue of Russia in this situation. I would, if I were ethnically Russian or from there, take that as very bad news. That's the cavalry. If that's the
Yeah. Well, there's
cavalry,
no there's no
you're
love lost between the two of them to begin with as well. There's that
right.
too.
There's a whole bunch of, and
Yeah.
by the way, John Hammersley is saying
There's a
war is a
long
crusade.
history.
War isn't a crusade if there are two people fighting in a war, because in every war, there is the attacker and the attacked. I don't know of any wars where they had a meeting first and decided on the war. I'm sure historically there was probably one like, kings arm wrestled and that it was a draw, so we have to have a war on the hustings tomorrow or some shit. But in this particular case, Ukraine is not engaged in war against Russia, except in the terms of self-defense. And so saying that Ukraine is involved in a war when they were attacked is a little bit like saying a rape victim is involved in sex, right? Consensual sex, because
And
one party
more than
consented
that,
to engaging in it. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Though, as an analogy, I
Well,
find it
yeah.
annoying.
Well, there's a couple of things. It's also worth mentioning. Ukraine will not go into Russia. When they reach the 91 borders, they
Yeah.
will stop.
They will
They
stop.
have
Right.
no claims. They have no claim on anything beyond those borders. They want
Right.
their country back. They want their land back. And not only do they want it in terms of like it was lost to them and they want to retrieve it, it's because they want to establish the idea of this is the law.
The
This
real
is
borders.
where
Yes. This is how you
this is
should
where the
behave.
border was
Right.
demarcated. So we will not go into. We have no aspirations on Russian territory. We have no aspirations on gaining some strategic advantage by going and taking Rostov or something like that.
Right.
There's nothing in it for the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians do not have an imperial mindset, unlike the Russians. So they will stop. So conquest, I don't accept. I don't agree with that premise. I have heard argument that like, oh, these poor Russian speakers out in the east in the Donbass. Well, we don't know. We don't know how they feel, because the second that the
They vote at
Euromaidan
gunpoint.
happened in 2000, a bunch of Russians showed up, and a bunch of thugs that were hired by Russia, paid for by Russia, armed by Russia, suddenly rocked up into these towns and said, "Do you want," with a gun pointed at your head? I mean, quite literally, do you want to be Russian or do you want to be Ukrainian?
Right.
Well, I mean, that's not a fair referendum. So,
Exactly.
let's get back to 91 borders. Let's hold a referendum if that's what if that's what the stipulations are in a peace negotiation. Once once those Ukrainian territories are able to have a free and fair election, and okay, I also can foresee the argument, well, now it's just Ukrainians who are holding the gun, and therefore the referendum won't be legitimate then.
Right.
Invite in international observers. Let's do this properly. And the Ukrainians, I believe firmly, if Crimea, as bitter of a pill as this would be to swallow, and I am not saying this is categorically the way it would happen, but I have faith that that if there was a proper referendum in Crimea, and it was free and monitored, and it was like, there's no extortion, there's no, hey, you better do it. Lovely peninsula here. Shame if something happened to it.
Right.
That kind of stuff didn't happen, and the Crimeans voted no. We want to be with Russia. I think Kiev would. I think Kiev would want certain agreements that it wouldn't be used as a launch pad for another invasion, or certain things that would put the Ukrainians at ease. But ultimately, if there was a proper, free, and fair referendum, because Ukraine, you have to understand, Ukraine is unlike. I've heard so much about what Ukraine wants to be. The Nazi thing keeps it will not go away, and that's on purpose, of course.
Right.
But
If you
there
have
is
to keep priming the pump,
somebody's
it's
here.
the engine is flooded, and in that particular instance, that's the problem they have with the Nazi excuse. The reason people keep bringing it up is because they recognize it's not landing. They hope that it will kick into some sort of like Goebbels like repetitive lie that people can pick up, and then finally, all right, maybe there is something to this. Where there's smoke, there's fire, but everybody knows it's steam and has moved on. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But what I see here on the ground in Ukraine and living amongst the Ukrainians is there is such a strong desire for this war to really mean something. That this is
Mm-hmm.
a historic moment for Ukraine. That they are
Right.
turning a page that is centuries in the making, and that they
Mm-hmm.
are going. And because of it, not only do they want to just be free and liberated and have self-determination
Mm-hmm.
and borders that are ratified, all the things that a normal nation state has that has been deprived of it primarily by Russia over the
Right.
centuries, that not only do they want that freedom and those borders and that self-determination, they want to really build something here. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, really, seriously, I hear it all the time. We have to get rid of corruption. We have to build a really strong liberal democracy. We want to live with every Ukrainian having the right to be who that Ukrainian wants to be, to have, to have a vote, to have, the liberties, civil liberties, and
Yeah.
to beat their, to basically be like America. They want
Well,
to
and
be
also
like
be
America
they want
or
to be an
proper Western.
an exemplary
Yes, they do.
democracy, which is what really makes them that's what makes
Yes.
you desirable for the functioning non-corrupt businesses in the world. You can be the
Which
Cayman
is why,
Islands, you can be Cyprus, you can
yes,
be Panama or some shit, and the assholes and criminals of the world can flock there to use you as a tax haven or some shit like that. But your people will always get fucked in the deal, and it will always make it difficult to build relationships with the countries that are actually functioning and making worthwhile shit, stuff you actually
yeah.
want instead of the like second tier knockoff everything's that everybody counts on from China in this
I
particular
mean,
case. But in yeah,
they're not finding spies, or they're not grabbing fifth columnists or guys that pretend to be journalists or politicians, but who are really just stooges for the GRU and the Russians. They're not lining those guys up and summarily just mowing them down like other nations might, including
mm-hmm.
Russia. There's due
Yeah,
process.
yeah,
There is a functioning court system here. There is a functioning electoral system here, although we haven't had a vote quite yet.
mm-hmm.
We're supposed to have one, I believe, it's in 24.
Yep,
But they want to, which is why I say, if Crimea were to have a free and fair referendum that was truly representative of the wishes of the people of Crimea, that Ukraine would swallow that bitter pill. And I know a lot of people will hear this and go, "You're full of it. You're that's pipe dream stuff. You're looking at it with rose-colored glasses." I argue that I am not,
mm-hmm.
because of this desire to not only be free and independent, but to be exemplary and to build something after all
Mm-hmm.
the blood, after
Well,
all the suffering.
yes,
It has to mean something. And
I
these
also don't know
people
how
want
you
a
would.
genuine liberal democracy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. I do. I will say that I don't know how you weed out what are effectively the Russian transplants that were meant to sway the voting in Crimea to make that vote where they would now. They
Yeah.
put people. Initially everybody there is Ukrainian. You roll in, take over the place, put a gun to their head, and say you'd really rather be Russian, wouldn't you? And then over time, those people either get moved out to Russia, which they've been doing. They've been evacuating people and then kidnapping women and
Yeah.
children and the like. And if what's your husband still there running the business while his wife and kids are trapped in Russia, and he's gonna vote his conscience, really? But at the same time, they move people from Russia in. Like, now it's our territory. We'll take the Ukrainians that were there, whether they like it or not, move them into Russia and put them in a situation where if they want any rights reasonably at all, they have to kiss our ass, and fill the place with Russians who are have already sworn that if it comes up, they'll side with it. That's one of the problems they have with it. I want to add one point
Yeah.
about
There's a lot of problems with
China.
Crimea. Crimea,
Yeah.
I don't want to give the impression that I think
Right.
Crimea is easily
Would be a
resolvable, or
right.
that there could even be, in the best of all worlds, a proper referendum. But you have
Yeah.
to try. You,
Yeah.
you
It's going to
simply
take a
have to
while.
try.
And by the way,
And
yeah.
Ukraine wants,
Hmm.
unlike the narrative that is spread by Russia and that is adopted by, people who are so desperate for peace that they will chuck Ukraine under the bus, there really is a strong desire for a proper functioning liberal democracy here.
Hmm.
And to just abandon that, and to look at it through this Americanism and this
Right.
American prism, it drives me to absolute distraction. And the last thing I'll say about it is Americans need to travel more.
Seriously.
Just
But
I,
that's another one. I agree. I
seriously.
would also I would like to say that one of the things that isn't coming up in the conversation about Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in terms of this sovereignty argument, everyone seems to focus on Taiwan as the principal reason for that argument. And the idea that they believe that Taiwan is part of their sovereign territory because the rest of the world viewed Taiwan as a nation, which the Chinese, which wasn't Chinese, by the way, people they're speaking Tagalog
Mhm.
largely, and then and it was I want to say the Spanish at one point colonized it. It was called Formosa, which is why Formosa oolong is one of the best oolongs in the world. It comes from Taiwan, but the Taiwan as a Chinese, as they took it over after the National Party left, fled after Mao took over, and it has never been under the CCP. It has never been under the Chinese government. It is simply largely now ethnically Chinese. And that's where the one China policy idea came from. It was because the rest of the world was looking at China as an impoverished country and going, yeah, we understand. You had a political disagreement, but basically these are mostly Chinese people. You have the Chinese culture is there. Okay, fine. But they didn't view it as eventually you just get to take over this government at one point if these people choose to, because we have a federalist mindset like you're talking about, an American view of things where, okay, they just run their government differently, but yeah, it's one China. Yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, the water, it's not that far away. Sure. It was very much meant to be an appeasement act towards the Chinese while they were growing. I think, but that's where everybody's focus has been. I personally think that China has big concerns about Hong Kong because of the push for democracy there, the fact that it was leased to the British for a very long time, that it culturally became even more Cantonese over time, the push to make Mandarin the national language and effectively over time, no matter what bullshit I believed from them early on that they were salvaging the other dialects by recording them and basically putting them aside, was really just the Haning of Chinese, where they intend at some point to squeeze the Cantonese people out of Hong Kong over time and use that in many ways the same way the Russians use Crimea because of its function as far as being surrounded by ports, it being a great seafaring area. It's why the Brits would have rather been there than someplace further up the coast, or even Taiwan itself when that shit was happening. There's a reason why that area was where they were like, we'll colonize this part, cool, and we'll sign a lease to do it, right? The Chinese, I think, the CCP in particular, and the Chinese is unfair because the people themselves are as diverse as Americans, are as diverse as Europeans, because these are, this is five nations loosely stitched together that one, the northeastern nation, which would be their equivalent of New York State, deciding to mow through and tell everybody, including the Texas of the country, which would be, down near Hong Kong in that area, what to do and how to do it in a much more imperial way. If I think people understood that was what was going on, they would, they might tap the brakes on their applause in this regard. But it's not 100% about Taiwan. It's partly about the fear that at some point the democracy movement might get stronger and stronger and stronger in Hong Kong, no matter how many times they try to put it down. And that becomes an easy breakaway because it's closer, but it's still technically separated from the mainland.
Mhm.
And it has a lot more parallels to Crimea and the Donbass for Chinese politics than Taiwan does. Taiwan's a long stretch. That's a lot of water to cross with a lot of people. And if China attacks Taiwan, they lose 1 million people that day. And their only response would be to obliterate the island totally, which would then, like, why do you even need the ground at that point? It's sad. So, so I think the real fight is about Hong Kong independence. So, and also I'd like to say the trolls, we have a couple of trolls because I put news from Kiev in the title, and so it draws them in. I want to thank them for being here, because without them we couldn't expand in the algorithm the way we have, and we show up in their viewers who watch this also watch this categories, and we wouldn't be able to do
Товарищи, я очень добро пожаловать. Я очень рад, что вы здесь. Я надеюсь, что погода в Санкт-Петербург очень красивой.
Oh, that's sweet. You do, and you'll clean it up. I don't know what that means, but they do.
I just basically said, welcome, comrades from Russia. I hope the weather in St. Petersburg is very good. Now go fuck yourself.
Fantastic. Yes, we're at 48.7, and that they help us grow. Honest to God, trolls, you'll find this out as you grow your. And by the way, I want to remind everybody, Philip has a vlog that you can, if you're a troll, you can comment on it. You might automatically be bounced because you can't control yourself from using racist, sexist, homophobic, and bigoted and warlike phrases. And so YouTube can kind of flick you away. I would say all you want to say, but just don't use those words so it can stay up, because you help boost stuff through. Because again, these companies don't give a shit what side you're on. What they want is engagement. So thanks for engaging, trolls. It's good. Yeah. How do you play what he said in reverse? You're gonna have to do that yourself.
What are the trolls? Well, I don't.
It's mostly.
I sometimes engage with them, but it's mostly Ukraine bad, filled with Nazis, bad.
Yes. That Trump would create world peace in less than 5 minutes. Yes, because
oh my God, because he would give away.
Yes, he would just give
Ukraine. Yes,
right. It would just give them the country. It would just go, all right, we're at peace now. Yeah, but no. Here's my idea for stopping the sexual assault. We're gonna marry her to her assaulter. That's the plan. That's the argument. That's what it is. That's old king shit. It's one of the reasons why, if you'll notice, Trump has this weird, the closest thing to a fiefdom arranged marriage that I have seen in the modern era, at least in the United States, is the Kushner-Trump real estate empire joining, where a weaker kingdom, the Trump kingdom, decides to marry off the princess to the prince, the questionable prince of an organization that they believe they could take over by sheer force of will, because the king of that one went to jail and the son has had to take the throne too early. It reeks of that kind of shit. It really does.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah. So that's it. There's other news in the areas that and I guess it's no surprise, but the Bakhmut, the fall of Bakhmut story. That was, I mean, that's all we heard last week, right? It's imminent. Every 3 hours, 2 hours, tonight, tomorrow, sometime in the morning, tomorrow afternoon, Bakhmut's going to fall, and the Russians are going to take it, and it's a pincer move, and they're going to take it, and then the supply lines, and then there's no way the Ukrainians will ever take it back. The Russians will hold it. Blah, blah, blah. That's all we fucking heard. And then there was this weird Wagner pause, where Prigozhin bitches about not having enough ammo, and then the Russians bitch about him, and then he says he should be able to criticize the military as a private citizen, so people, and that other people should be able to, so they can bitch on his behalf, right?
Yep.
And then they just stopped.
He sure doesn't want criticism of his own guys. Yeah. Sure.
Right. So the two big moves, I think, is the Japanese prime minister being there, which is fantastic. And that, Zelensky visited troops near Bakhmut. He was in, I guess, today or yesterday in the area where you were, very close to there. And then there was I think
it was in Kramatorsk.
Yeah. And then Crimea. So there was a huge
Oh, yes.
explosion. We haven't talked since then. So tell people what
Yeah.
happened in Crimea.
Well, it was apparently they were moving. Was it artillery shells or drones? I've forgotten. They were
Missiles,
transit. They were transiting
cruise missiles.
ordnance. So our cruise. That's right. It was calibers
Yeah,
from the train station to the supply depot, and Ukrainian intelligence was so good that they were able to smack them in transit, and they took out a whole bunch of cruise missiles.
yeah.
So
Those are the ones that they bring to the boats down in Sevastopol, I guess, load them
that's
up,
right.
and then they
Hmm.
fire inland, into, Odessa and Kiev and that area, shooting at infrastructure with these cruise missiles from the sea. And so they got to bring their boats in, they got to unload them, they got to load them back on, they got to, clear them out, and then they got to put more of them on board, and then they've got to send those boats out, and then they got to find a target, and that's time intensive. And then you add an extra step, which is it takes them what I want to say they in one barrage of cruise missiles they use up a one single barrage they use up a month's supply,
A month
and
supply. Yeah, yeah.
right, and they are four
But what
months
I find
behind.
interesting is, yeah, oh yeah, no, their missiles, their ordnance, entire ordnance, their missiles, artillery, they're running out of stuff. But what I found most interesting about that strike in Crimea was the
Mhm.
fact that it was in transit, and that's
Yes,
hard.
yeah, hit
That's
a moving
really
target,
hard to do.
right?
To hit a moving target, to know exactly when that shipment is being made, to know what route they're taking, that all that kind of stuff. Not
Hmm.
easy to do.
Right.
So some very sophisticated intelligence there, some very coordinated. I wouldn't be surprised if it's
Hmm.
I don't know what they hit him with. I wouldn't be surprised if it was HIMARS.
Hmm.
Although I'm. It could also be one of the
They
Ukrainian
believed it
drones.
was yeah. So the belief was, and in the reports that I saw, that it was a drone because they heard a
Yeah,
whirring
sounds
sound
right.
in the air before the
Yeah, it
attack
sounds
actually
right.
happened. And if you're going to hit a moving target, that would be the way to do it, because it
Drone
can
is,
hang
is
out.
yeah.
It
You
can
can.
hang out and
That's right.
target, as opposed to a missile that has to know where it's going. And if they
But all
stop the
of this
train,
is
it'll miss it.
also
Yeah.
we are seeing all sorts of notifications coming out in Crimea now of like, have a bag packed, be ready to move. Don't stay
Hmm.
if like if you don't have to be here, don't be here. If you have other, they're prepping their people, their Russian
Yeah.
supporting populace on Crimea to be ready to withdraw, which is an
Hmm.
incredibly
Telling moment. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a telling moment, and who'd have thought it, 6 months ago.
Yes, and there's a
So
great phrase. There's a great phrase that I enjoyed in this story. I don't know if you know the phrase or whatever. It's a Ukrainian wordplay on a Russian word klopok, which they call mysterious cotton. Um, they call a bomb, like, one of these, like, I don't know. I would call it a sneak attack or a sabotage attack or whatever. Any of these, fifth column or seventh column or ninth column, whatever we're at this point. 225, 250, whatever works. That these, like, gosh, those guys sure do smoke near ammunition a lot. Those things are called mysterious cotton. The statement was not accompanied by any claim of
yes,
responsibility, but the intelligence statement playfully suggested the attack was a mysterious cotton, a Ukrainian wordplay on a Russian word klopok, commonly used by authorities to describe a bomb blast.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they
that
they did
sounds
not
about right.
claim. Yep, they did not claim responsibility, but they'll take the credit. Also, I'd like to point out in this map that I have up on screen right now, that is, they are all the way to the river everywhere in the Kherson area,
Hmm.
of the entire
Hmm.
area. They have reclaimed that, because before they had little bits over here. There was some near the top. That is completely cleaned out. And if you look right over here, past Zaporizhia, right there, see that little yellow mark? It's a little hard to see right over. That is newly reclaimed Ukrainian territory as well. And this is supposed to
Hmm.
be area that this is the meat grinder area that Russia was supposed to have held or gotten by now, a while back. Bakhmut's further up, but there's still more of this stuff going on because they were going to come around the outside of Zaporizhia again and do this business, and that never fucking happened. But Jankui, which sounds like a word that Borat would say. I got to say, Jankui. But this is where that train hit took place. And
in Crimea.
Yes, in Crimea, right here,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And then I would argue, look at Crimea, and then go look at Hong Kong, go look at like the Hong Kong territories.
Yeah, if you tilt it on its side.
Yeah, geographically, but for this little piece right here, it's not that different.
Very similar.
Very similar. And strategically, from a Chinese, government point of view, with the democratic movements going on, because Taiwan's already a lost cause democracy-wise. They have a democracy. It works. They're great at it. And destroying it would be an overt act. But if this shifts for them, if Hong Kong shifts, they're fucked. They are, talk about a pincer move politically. So yeah, I think it has a lot more to do with Hong Kong than people want to talk about. That said, and that's why they were playing footsie with him around that deal. And when Trump was making his deal with the Chinese, he came out and said, I think Xi's handled that thing in Hong Kong very professionally. Remember all that language? It's because that's what they give a fuck about. So, anyways, that was one of the others. I'm trying to think. There's so much has happened in the last bit.
Well, I mean, look, the guy, the head of the Ukrainian armed forces, Zaluzhny, is a very competent commander, and we are looking at a Ukrainian counteroffensive within the next month at the outside, probably sooner than that, and it will not be what anybody's expecting, because that's how Zaluzhny runs. That's how he operates. I mean, look at what he did in Kherson as opposed to Kharkiv. We all were convinced that the offensive would be launched against Kherson, and instead of that, he circled around. He gave enough indications that it was going to be Kherson for the Russians to buy it, and then he circled around and he retrieved Kharkiv, which is arguably strategically more, well, I don't want to say more important, but of equal importance. And then came back and got Kherson because, it was, he is a crafty guy. He is incredibly good at his job. And I think that I am interested to see what happens with this offensive. I think a lot of territory is going to fall back into Ukrainian hands. There's the weapons shipments that are happening. They're stepping up the Abrams so that we're going to see Abrams in the field by the end of the year as opposed to the beginning of next year. There's the announcement by the Brits that they're going to be giving depleted uranium rounds to the Ukrainians, which has Russia absolutely furious, claiming that they're sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, shit. So Gary Kasparov, the chess master who's formerly Russian chess master, ethnically Russision, but lives, I believe, in London now. Is he? He's outside of the country.
Or New York. No, I think he's in New York. I think he's in New York.
Apparently, he just posted this, and this is fucking ginormous. This should make anybody who was applauding the Xi Putin meeting and thinking that Putin gained some ground in this shit themselves. This is from Kiev Post, but it is true. China's Ministry of Natural Resources, and boy, oh boy, natural resources, that's important, has just issued new regulations on map content, which require the addition of old Chinese names to the current Russian-pronounced geographical names of 8 places along the Russia-Chinese border. Holy shit.
Yep.
Do you know what a fuck you that is? I mean, that is the equivalent from the Chinese, from the CCP standpoint. That is the equivalent of parking tanks on a border. That is like
there is a long
Holy
standing
shit.
animosity between China and Russia. The only reason that they are bedfellows is because they want to counter the United States and they want to counter NATO and Western powers. But there's no
I
love lost between. Oh my God, they hate each other, the
oh
Chinese
my
and the
gosh.
Russians.
Oh
They
yeah. And
really have a problem with one another.
well, and everybody was looking at the the footage of when she said that Putin was his good friend when he said that, and they cut over to Putin, and
Sure.
he's like, uh-huh. Like, because I'll tell you why, and it's so gorgeous. It's so choice. Okay, remember when Trump came out of his meeting with Putin looking like he just had a broomstick up his ass and had signed over his life? Remember that?
What, the one in Buenos Aires or the one in
In
Scandinavia?
all of them, I guess. The like I think it was the one in Scandinavia, but where the one where he's like hunched over. Like people make memes of a leash being around his neck and Putin holding it from that one, but he just looks demoralized and broken as a man. It's also, I believe it's the same time, if I'm not mistaken, that he said, "I can't imagine why it would be Russia." That thing when he was
That was
defending them and all that
Helsinki.
shit. Right,
That was
Helsinki. That's
Helsinki.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's just fucking miserable in that. Okay, Putin had the same look on his face after his meeting with Xi. Same
Yeah.
shit. Same circumstance. Putin is now finding himself in second position in the human centipede that he was in first. Trump's third, right? But Putin just realized that someone's ass is getting sewn to his mouth, and it like you can tell. And that story, that piece, that little bit that just happened, that where Kasparov was saying that. Hold on one second. If I can scroll past because it popped in there, the fact that Kiev story is happening, and this is about Zelensky now walking around in near Bakhmut and all that area. The fact that the Chinese did that right after the meeting is,
Yes.
I mean, and you have to understand the Chinese concept of face, about, both getting it yourself from the other person and giving them some out of respect. That you can save face yourself by appearing magnanimous. It's part of their whole like greenwashing bullshit that they do, because they want to look like they're a fair player on the world stage as far as, climate and the like, when they are absolutely not. But what they do is they expect you to, cut them some slack, and they expect, I guess, everyone else to believe them when they're like, look at the wonderful things that we're doing, right? Look, we're throwing the world a bone. Aren't we lovely? You gain face that way, and you give the rest of the world face by, you're our good partner in this. And it's all horseshit. But
Yeah.
the fucking, the nerve of these motherfuckers to sit there while he says, you are my good friend, and then go back home, and then and specifically that organization, the ministry, in charge of national resources, which means welcome to slant drilling. The Chinese have decided there will be blood, and they're going to be
I
drinking
drink your milkshake.
Yeah, I drink your milkshake. Now I'm an old
Drink your
man,
milkshake.
and this is my
No, I'm doing that.
I drink your milkshake. By the way, he's doing a John Huston impersonation. For anybody who thinks that's method acting, it is just an impersonation. It is the same thing. Yeah, he's the only guy he could find where there's plenty of footage of him who was born during that time and would speak like that. So John Huston was so old that there's plenty of footage of him speaking, and he grew up in the era where that's how everyone would have talked. Now I understand. My boy.
Yeah.
He just borrowed.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny about that summit though? So there's so many like things on the periphery which are odd, but I think reveal so much more than the actual thing itself. The delivery of 30 some odd bags of KFC to the Chinese delegation at their hotel because they didn't want to eat a bunch of Russian food. That's kind of an insult. And again, it's face, right? Then there's the photograph of the lineup of Putin's cabinet,
right?
And at the tail end, Lavrov and Medvedev are like giggling at one another like drunken schoolboys, And
Right.
then after this kind of like
Oh,
moment of them sharing, like a handshake and they're glad handing, Medvedev is leaving, and a Russian broadcaster, asked Medvedev a question. I can't remember what the specifics of the question was, but all the commentators, the Russian language, like diaspora commentators, like, he's drunk. It's like 10 in the morning, and he's drunk
yes.
because he's
Right.
slurring his words and he's talking like really kind of loosey goosey, and he's
Right.
like, and all these like Russian observers and these guys who speak the language far better than I do,
Yeah.
we're like, oh my God, Medvedev's drunk and it's 10 in the morning. What the hell? Shoigu, leaving the same meeting, is asked by the Russian, what do you think this means? What does this mean for the war? And Shoigu says, well, all wars end eventually in negotiations.
Right.
Shoigu, the head of the defense ministry in Russia,
Right.
whereas, you couldn't even call it a war a few months ago. It was a special military operation. It
Hmm.
on the surface of it, it may look like this was a good meeting, like they came with. I mean, obviously, nothing of substance was achieved.
Right.
But if you read the tea leaves, if you kind of check the body language, and if you look at, especially on the Russian side, you can easily see that on the Russian side of things, aside from maybe Putin, um,
Hmm.
although, yeah, you could even include Putin. They all know that they are being humiliated by having to go hat in
Right.
hand to China and go, please salvage this horrible, horrible decision that we've made. So,
Yeah.
I don't think anything substantial came out of the summit. I think it was an embarrassment for Russia. I think it was a clear uh, kind of like, it was clear that it was Moscow saying to Beijing, "We need your help," and Moscow doesn't like to do that. So
Well, and
yeah,
they're not getting it. Here's this
and
is
they're not going to get it.
Palki Sharma. She's from she was on WeOn, um, and I have to confess an affinity for the way she says numbers, because on Indian television, if they say 15, they say 1-5. And if they say 51, they'll say 5-1. They always add an extra thing to clarify the number, which I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a fantastic habit that everyone should get into, especially when they're speaking quickly. Guilty as charged. This is her post. China has declared a map war on Russia. Beijing has released maps showing Russian cities with Chinese names. The Qing dynasty gave up those lands to the Russian Empire more than 100 years ago. Now China wants them back. Testing the limits of the No Limits Partnership. And then this is the Kiev Post story. China challenges Russia by restoring Chinese names of cities on their border, and then continues with areas on the other side of the border. A day
Yep.
later, after the meeting, before this, they put this up, and then a day later, they release a map rules that extends it beyond the actual border. Shit.
No, the
So you have
tensions between Russia, the friction between Russia and China goes back
are
centuries.
like this. I don't think people can wrap their head around what a fuck you this is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, okay.
I'm
You
stunned.
really want to get it? You
Jesus,
really
yeah.
want to get into it? I mean,
Boy, do I.
it goes back to the days when Moscow was basically the bagman for the Slavic world when it came
Right.
to the Mongol Empire, which
Right. To
contained
sell slaves.
controlled a whole
Yes.
chunk of. Yeah, they were subjects of the Mongols and the Golden Horde, which of course is not all encompassing when it comes to modern day China, but there's still this mentality in Russia. And then it goes throughout their entire history. They fought wars against
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese. There's no love lost. So
Right.
for them to go hat in hand to China
Ugh.
to try to save
Dude.
themselves from utter humiliation and defeat against the Western powers it's going to have an effect on Russia, and because they're so. I mean, part of this entire war is about their sense as being a great world power and an imperial power that's held sway and
Right.
is a big
Oh.
big swinging dick on the global stage,
Right.
and then to have to go to China, and it's like, well, going to resonate internally within Russia.
Jesus Christ! Yes,
I still
yeah,
think we're over, but look,
yeah,
long and short of it is, Russia is going to be defeated. There's no question.
yeah.
Ultimately, they cannot win this war.
Dude, they might get flanked
Everybody,
from the other fucking side at this point. Like
yep,
like
they
the
might be chipped away. Yeah,
with
sure.
the what is it, the Kuril Islands? I'm always mispronouncing it.
The Japanese have the Kuril Islands, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
which
mean,
was
they
the
just met
Russians seized in the last 2 weeks of the war,
right,
of the Second
and
World War.
yeah, and Japan just meeting with Ukraine, and China meeting with Russia, and Japan is showing up to Ukraine to help, and uh, and China's basically there to collect protection money. Effectively, they're just there to like rattle the cage a little bit. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, this is a terrible situation for the Russians to be in. This is
Sure.
um, I don't think people grasp, but I mean, beyond the fact that the sanctions are biting, their economy is taking a giant shit. They are selling their oil now at cost to China to just stop China from either supporting Ukraine or effectively
Pressuring
calling them
them
out.
to,
Yeah,
yeah, pressuring them to
uh,
give it up. But
yeah,
before we go, I do want to reiterate,
yeah,
the folks who listen to us, we're all on the kind of left edge of the
hmm
spectrum here. It's
hmm
not, we all hate war. Nobody likes war.
right,
But the argument that I saw from TYT, I expected it. I expected it from
right,
Jimmy Dore. I expected it
right,
from Hinkle. Of
right,
course, Ritter. All the rest of it. But what upset me when I saw, and look, I shouldn't watch TYT, but occasionally I do. But what upset me about their analysis of it, and I
right,
suspect that it will be coming from other sectors of the left as well, is this
yep,
idea that America is being a belligerent,
right,
is rejecting any peace because they want to attack Russia, or they're warmongers, or the military industrial complex wants to sell more weapons. It's not, that is seen through an American prism.
hmm
I am on the ground in Ukraine. I am telling the audience that listens to us, and if if this argument comes up either by their right wing nut job guys, or even folks on the left who are just so anxious for peace that they'll accept it no matter what,
hmm
we all want this war to end. No, nobody wants
right,
this war to end more than the Ukrainians
right.
themselves.
We just want to
And
end and it
I'm
be
on the
for a
ground here,
purpose
but
instead of
and it
just like,
has to
yeah,
end. It has to end so that it doesn't happen again.
again,
And if
right.
you leave an opening, if you
hmm
leave an opening for the Russians, they will circle back and it will come. It has to be a definitive defeat. As awful as that is, as awful as the fact that that might mean a continuation of war, which
hmm
everybody hates to see. But if you don't do it, if you don't finish it, the Russians will come back. So it's not about
Yes.
the military industrial complex. It's not about America bad, belligerents, that we love war and we want to humiliate Russia. The Ukrainians themselves, who want this, who are suffering more than anybody else. I don't know if anybody saw the attack on the apartment building in Zaporizhia recently in the last
Yeah.
36 hours. It's horrific. It's terrible. We are losing people on a daily basis, men, women, and children. It is an awful situation, but the Ukrainians know their enemy better than anybody, and it has nothing to do with America. It has everything to do with Russia. And if Russia is not soundly and roundly defeated, they will
Right.
come back. So we all
hmm
want it to end, but Xi's peace plan is a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
And
Oh, it's like I
if they
I'm
take those
enjoying
four
it.
hopeless, they'll
Yeah.
keep coming back. So it's
Right.
got to
I'm
finish, but it has to finish with 91 borders as a starting point.
That's right.
That's
And
my
I
those are
agree.
my
And
final words.
I think that's ultimately where all the sane people on earth are currently in the same way. In the same way that I don't believe there should be any more Israeli settlements in Palestinian areas. And that seems easy to fucking believe. I'm not I think it's
Oh damn
wrong.
it! There's
Right.
one more thing I'm going to say. Then
Uh-huh.
you brought it up. It's your fault, house
Yes.
folks.
Yes, I blame myself.
I work when I was working for CBS. I arranged during the Third Intifada
hmm
an interview with Rafik Hariri, who was subsequently assassinated, the Prime Minister of Lebanon.
hmm
And this was 2000. It was between Afghanistan and the beginning of the Iraq War, so it was probably 2000. 2 or
Right.
something like that. Anyhow, we flew Dan Rather in, and Dan and Rafiq Hariri sat down and had a debate. And I had an interview, had a discussion. And Rather says to Hariri at one point in this interview, he says, look, the Golan, it's this tiny little orchard. It's nothing. Why not just let Israeli have it? Israeli have it. It's such a small piece of land. And Hariri goes, yes, but it's our land.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's the difference. And
Mm-hmm.
and those who scream and jump and shout about Gaza or the West Bank or Golan, all of which I would find common ground on a lot of those arguments. But
Mm-hmm.
it's this. Why is it that it's okay? You know that it is reprehensible there. But oh my God, Russia has a nuke, and and
Yeah.
oh, who cares if they take away Donbass? There are a bunch of Russian speakers out there anyway. Yeah, well, they may be Russian speakers, but Quebecois speak French. They're still Canadian. Um,
Right.
it's just
Yeah, agreed.
it's their bloody land. Go back
Yes.
to 91 borders, and
Right.
then we can talk about further aspects of peace. But until 91 borders are
Right.
reestablished, it will only incentivize Russia to keep coming back, and the conflict will not end. We need to
Right.
finish this war, but we need to finish it conclusively, and that means that territory has to be retrieved.
Yes, and if you're showing NATO expansion
And I hope it
maps
happens
to as
soon.
to defend your position, you also have to show the concurrent map over time of Russia attacking former Soviet states and trying to reclaim them at the exact same fucking time. So
Yeah.
the idea being is that expansion was in reaction to aggression from Russia on innocent people's land. Go ask the folks in Georgia. Go ask the Chechens if you can find ones that aren't dead or on Russia's side now. And the same shit they're trying to do with Ukraine. This is
I hope
this.
it. We all hope it ends soon. But
Yes,
if it doesn't end the right way, it's just going to be 10
it will
years
keep going.
down the
It
road.
won't end.
It'll
It will
just be
never end. If you
repeating.
want a forever war, if
It'll
you
never
want a
end.
forever war, let Russia win this. That's
Yeah.
what a forever war
Or,
looks like.
or an unacceptable negotiated
Mm-hmm.
peace that only incentivizes Russia to take another swing at it.
Precisely. Same thing. Same thing.
Trust the
Oh, hi.
Ukrainians. They
Yeah,
know their enemy. They
absolutely.
know their enemy. All right,
Exactly.
Hal,
Cheers,
I'll
brother.
see you on
Got to run.
Saturday.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
All
All
right,
right. Bye
everybody.
bye.
Thanks for listening. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks. And thanks everybody for joining the show. By the way, as I just just as I came, hi buddy, can I help you? This guy came in. Hi buddy. Chip, who is now a panda. Hi buddy. It makes him look fatter when I hold him like this. He gets very self-conscious. He's a big cat. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's like practically a serval at this point. What are you doing? Hi. Can I help you, little boy? Are you mad because I went over? He now knows the show ends at 11, and he starts sitting near the door, going, "What? Can you come over and do that thing where you watch the news and I sit on your lap and you pet me?" Hi, buddy. You okay? You all right? You just feeling lonely? Yeah. Anyways, love you guys. Thanks so much for the support today. Thanks for the super chats. Everybody really, 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 really helps out. If you like the show and the fact that I don't have a giant studio like Glenn Beck or TYT, there's a difference. And you'd like to remedy that one day, bit by bit, drip by drip. That's how we're gonna build this empire one brick at a time. God damn it. Okay, hi buddy. I'll let you down because you want to play with my. I have a hairband on the floor, and he's like, dook, 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 dook. Don't, Chipper, get back. No. Thank you. No. This morning, I didn't get up fast enough to feed him, so I have one of those little chargers for my Apple Watch and my phone and my AirPods. I'm trying to be efficient, and it's my AirPods sitting there, and he just knocked them right off, just batted them onto the floor. Both of them fell out of the case, bounced across the floor, and I'm like, shit. Hal and Phil, did you see the Wagner video? As the chat room is saying, yes, we're late to this part of it. I will depending on which Wagner video we're talking about, I'll ask him about that on Saturday as well. Anyways, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else, and I'll see you guys this afternoon to see more Trump flip out and how we're a banana republic. Enjoy the bananas, everybody, because it's Johnny Bananas. And anyways, all right. Are you familiar with the Krasny brothers? One or both would come on your show. Oh yeah, I know those guys. I've seen them on that. That's a great idea. Andre, everybody powwow with Andre on guests. Please accept my $317 cash. I will, Amy. Thank you. Hold on. Hold on. Is it on there? Do I have to accept it, or does it just go through? Emily, thank you for espresso. That's lovely. Cool. I will, Amy. I didn't know I had to accept it, but I will do that. Excellent. Okay. All right. I got to go. Much love. See you this afternoon. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Okay. Bye. And holy shit, the fucking Chinese names on maps thing. I'm still reeling. Wow.